In May 1939, King George VI and Queen Elizabeth undertook a 6-week tour of Canada. The 9,000-mile journey took the royal couple from Quebec to Vancouver and then back east to Halifax. They arrived in Vancouver to a rapturous welcome. The movie footage includes scenes of the Royal Motorcade in Queen Elizabeth Park, on Georgia Street in downtown Vancouver, and in Stanley Park. The Queen, with her dazzling smile and easy manner, was the undisputed star. But the tour also bolstered the self-confidence of the shy king, for whom public appearances and public speaking had been such an ordeal. King George VI and Queen Elizabeth spent the day of June 15th in Halifax. A huge crowd gathered at the garrison grounds to see the royal couple witness a pageant and a musical entertainment by school children. Their Majesties were enormously popular wherever they appeared, and the enthusiasm of those who turned out to see them was infectious. Even today, many Canadians recall being held up on their parents' shoulders so they could catch a glimpse of the King and Queen and retain a memory of the moment. Although the coverage makes the royal visit appear casual and informal, security was said to have been meticulously planned. On the early evening of June the 15th, their Majesties left Canada on the Empress of Britain for the colony of Newfoundland. Many assembled at Halifax Harbour sobbed as a massed band of pipers played "Will Ye No Come Back Again." The royal tour of 1939 confirmed that the monarchy had captured the minds and hearts of Canadians from coast to coast. It is hard to believe that this period of joyous national celebration was just a few months away from the Second World War. In October and November 1951, Princess Elizabeth and Duke of Edinburgh undertook the first major royal tour of Canada following the war. Little amateur footage exists of the visit. These scenes show the arrival of the royal couple in Vancouver on October 20th, 1951. The princess inspected a guard of honor and was greeted by Premier Byron Johnson and other local dignitaries. In reality, the princess was chosen to represent her father, King George, who was gravely ill, a fact that was unknown to the public. At the start of the tour, Princess Elizabeth said that she had long cherished a dream of coming to Canada ever since her parents had come back 12 years previously with tales of Canada's splendors. The princess frequently wore the mink coat, which had been given to her by the people of Canada as a wedding present. Because of persistent cold and rain, the de Havilland Aircraft Company designed a clear plexiglass roof to enable the royal couple to be seen by the huge crowds who waited hours to see them. This visit to an unidentified building captured excellent footage of the young and attractive 25-year-old heir to the throne, who would shortly become queen. On this occasion, the sunshine must have been a welcome change from the previous day, when heavy rain had so thoroughly soaked the ground where a tree planting ceremony was to take place that Princess Elizabeth had to shovel mud onto the sapling's roots. Still, Her Majesty remarked that on this, her first visit to Canada, that she and Prince Philip felt very much at home, and that she hoped that their children would not have to wait as long as she did before their first visits to this country. Some said it was unfortunate that the royal parents had missed the third birthday of Prince Charles. However, he may have been somewhat placated with the abundance of presents his parents brought home, including numerous toys and replicas of cars made by the Ford Motor Company especially for him. The footage of the Royal Highness's departure from Vancouver on HMCS Crusader may have suffered from some film deterioration or overexposure. However, the misty quality creates an atmosphere that is rather pleasing. A few photos from Halifax newspapers of 1951 show Princess Elizabeth inspecting an honor guard, viewing exhibits at the Maritime Museum, meeting President A.E. Carr at Dalhousie University, accepting a floral bouquet from a young admirer, enjoying a private visit at the home of Premier Angus L. MacDonald, and attending a formal dinner hosted by Premier MacDonald. Halifax was decked out royally to greet Queen Elizabeth, accompanied by Prince Philip, on Her Majesty's first major tour as sovereign. The window displays are possibly at the Eaton's department store, located then on Barrington Street. The Royal Motorcade entered Halifax via the relatively new Angus L. MacDonald Bridge. One wonders if the royal couple might have had a memory of the popular premier who had hosted them 8 years before. A brief rain shower necessitated the use of the bubble top on the royal car. However, the sun shone as the Queen and the Duke of Edinburgh arrived at the garrison grounds, the scene of previous royal events. Here, Her Majesty was to present the Queen's colour to the Royal Canadian Navy. The Queen's colour symbolizes loyalty to the sovereign, to Canada, and to the Navy. It is consecrated during a religious portion of the ceremony and is never paraded on board ship or on foreign territory. When paraded, it is given the same respect as if Her Majesty herself were present, and it is at all times saluted with the highest honour. The royal couple spent 6 weeks in Canada, visiting every province and territory, as well as making a fleeting visit to the United States. One principal event was that the royal couple participated in the official opening of the new St. Lawrence Seaway. A final scene shows Her Majesty and Prince Philip in the royal limousine following a gala state dinner. On a damp, foggy July morning, an estimated 10,000 Nova Scotians gathered in and around the Grand Parade in central Halifax, as the Royal Yacht Britannia slipped into a berth at the Halifax waterfront. Neither the inclement weather nor the fact that the Queen and Prince Philip were slightly behind schedule seemed to dampen the enthusiasm of those who had come from all parts of the province. It had been 17 years since the royal couple's last visit. As the Queen and Prince Philip arrived, there was flag waving and a spontaneous burst of applause. The Queen's first official function was to turn the sod to mark the commencement of construction for the city's planned Metro Centre. Mr. Art Hustins, the Metro Board's president, introduced their Royal Highnesses to board members and other officials. He then showed Her Majesty an architectural model of the center, and they engaged in a brief conversation. Her Majesty shows interest in the project, but as you continue to watch her, she starts looking around and appears a little distracted. The floral bouquet she is holding may be the problem. Perhaps she was waiting for her lady-in-waiting to relieve her of the flowers as the sod-turning ceremony was about to take place. Prince Philip's evident enthusiasm does not display any such concern. But where is that lady-in-waiting? In any event, all seems well as the first sod is turned without incident. Following the ceremony, the crowd disperses, and the empty lot which would house the new center is in prominent view. Later in the day, another eager crowd gathered at the stadium of St. Mary's University, where a large-scale entertainment event was to take place. The crowd clapped and cheered as the white convertible carrying the Queen and Prince Philip arrived. The royal couple was greeted by Recreation Minister Garnet Browne, who made the official introductions and showed Her Majesty and Prince Philip to their seats. Under threatening skies, more than 8,000 prepared to witness a variety of performers in what was billed as an Olympic folk show. Minister Browne, who sat with Her Majesty, said later that the Queen appeared delighted with the show. He made no comment on the fate of the piano or the fact that the rain showed no respect for those in the official viewing stand. The following day, Her Majesty's schedule included visits to towns in the Annapolis Valley region of the province, which included the official opening of the Hants County Hospital in the town of Windsor. The uncertain weather persisted, but the various groups who had staked out positions to view the royal couple seemed in high spirits. Upon the arrival of the royal motorcade, Premier Gerald Regan and Mrs. Regan greeted Her Majesty and Prince Philip and introduced the official party. Security was clearly in evidence as Her Majesty and Prince Philip were shown to their places on the platform. The customary bouquet of flowers was presented to the Queen. A light rain shower did not last, and Prince Philip took charge of the royal umbrella. With her official duties concluded, the Queen walked casually with the Premier and spoke informally to a few lucky members of the public. The royal couple would next visit New Brunswick and then open the Olympic Games in Montreal, where Princess Anne would compete with the British equestrian team. In 1978, a year after the highly successful celebrations of her Silver Jubilee, the Queen and Prince Philip visited Newfoundland and Saskatchewan prior to attending the Commonwealth Games in Edmonton. Prince Edward, who was entering adolescence, joined his parents for part of the tour. The young prince can be seen seated between his parents as the royal limousine rounds the bend. The first day of the visit was blessed with sunshine, but this did not continue. While in Saskatoon, The royal family stayed at the President's residence on the campus of the University of Saskatchewan. That summer, I was teaching in a program at the university and living on campus. I thus had easy access to Her Majesty as she visited various buildings on the campus. Security did not seem particularly heavy, and I was able to get close for unobstructed views of the Queen. I was particularly impressed with Her Majesty's relaxed and easygoing manner. While I had seen the Queen on prior royal visits, this was the first time I had been able to witness her personal charm and warmth at close range. She also appeared to be really enjoying herself. Seeing former Prime Minister Diefenbaker at one point was an unexpected surprise. The Queen's younger sister, Princess Margaret, visited Canada for the first time in 1958. Dubbed by the press as the fairy tale princess, she was treated everywhere she went almost as if she were the Queen herself. Frank Sinatra called her hip and the best ambassador England ever had. Throughout the 1950s, her photograph received front-page coverage by the world's leading newspapers and magazines. She is seen here in Halifax just after planting a willow tree on a site where public hangings used to take place. A huge crowd turned out to see this world celebrity, whose popularity rivaled that of any film star. She was described as flirtatious, sensual, and a fashion leader who led a highly unconventional lifestyle. The princess was taken by helicopter to Dagley, Nova Scotia. By 1958, she had abandoned any plan to marry Group Captain Peter Townsend, who had been her father's equerry. The British government had considered the divorced commoner as unsuitable for the Queen's sister. Many believe that Princess Margaret's ultimate decision was based both on her respect for the Queen and her own personal sense of duty. A few months before this Canadian tour, the princess had met a fashion photographer, Anthony Armstrong Jones. They would marry in 1959 in the first royal wedding to be televised. The Queen would bestow upon him the title of Lord Snowdon, and Princess Margaret became the Countess of Snowdon. Of all the royal family, the Snowdons really moved with the times. Giving and receiving invitations to fabulous parties, they met, sang, and danced to the music of the best bands and singers. The Beatles were top of the list, but there were other actors and performers whom the princess knew and who were part of her inner circle, including Elizabeth Taylor, Frank Sinatra, Maggie Smith, Sophia Loren, and the jazz composer and musician Duke Ellington. When she was about to meet Duke Ellington for the first time, Princess Margaret asked a friend, "What shall we talk about?" The friend replied, "Ask him what it's like to be a duke." Princess Margaret returned to Nova Scotia in 1988. She was still glamorous at 58. The visit was warm, but low-key compared to her visit of 30 years before. In Nova Scotia, she visited the fishing village of Sambro to unveil a memorial to fishermen lost at sea, and to attend an afternoon reception with local residents. By now, the princess was divorced from Lord Snowdon, and a widely publicized friendship with a young Welshman had resulted in much adverse publicity. Sometimes described as elitist, the princess actually had a wide range of interests, from church, choral, and classical music to jazz, blues, and show tunes. She also had a love of country and western music. Once, while in the United States, she arranged a visit to the Grand Ole Opry. She sat and sang along with such famous names as Emmylou Harris and Chet Atkins. The undoubted highlight, however, was an appearance by Dolly Parton, of whom the princess had long been a fan, a fact that these residents of Sambro might have found quite astonishing. On this visit, one of her royal duties was to present a new colour to the Princess Louise Fusiliers, of which she was colonel-in-chief. Until dogged by later ill health, Princess Margaret remained active in her support of the Queen and the monarchy, and the numerous regiments, charities, and other organizations with which she had long been associated. She was the patron or president of over 80 organizations, ranging from ballet companies to children's charities to groups providing support for those with AIDS. Much of her charitable work went unpublicized. Princess Margaret's official biographer wrote that despite her image as a party-loving socialite, she had a sense of duty deeply ingrained in her character. It may also be said that she played a significant part in helping to change attitudes and modernize the monarchy as we know it today. In June and July 1983, Prince Charles and Diana, Princess of Wales, undertook a 17-day tour of Canada. On June 27th, they arrived in Charlottetown aboard the Royal Yacht Britannia. Charlottetown is also known as the Cradle of Confederation, as it was here in 1864 that the historic conference took place that led to the formation of Canada as a nation in 1867. Province House, located in Queen's Square in the heart of Charlottetown, was the venue for the official welcome. Upon their arrival, the Prince and Princess were greeted by Premier James Lee and Mrs. Lee and other local dignitaries. Following their wedding of the century in 1981, the royal couple was at the height of worldwide popularity, and Di-mania was inescapable at every public appearance. Even her official hosts occasionally dropped their guard of reserve and succumbed to their own form of Di-mania. As part of the requisite formalities, Prince Charles carried out the customary inspection of a military guard of honor. Fortunately, to get these photos of Prince Charles, no police, security agents, or other barriers were blocking the view. For the amateur photographer, attempting to photograph royalty is frequently a challenging and frustrating task. The TV and camera crews usually are positioned in the best spots. Security often block access, or at the time of arrival of the royal personage, an excited crowd can push in front of you just at the moment you think you are about to take the perfect picture. On this occasion, however, luck was with the amateur. This tour was said to reflect the interests of Prince Charles and his Canadian hosts. Princess Diana's own interests and involvement in planned events was said not to be a priority. In looking at these images of the official proceedings, one might get a certain sense of disinterest on the part of the princess. One commentator said that Diana was the star who never got near a microphone. But when the official welcomes were over and the princess engaged in informal contact with the people, she seemed to glitter, giving an unprecedented combination of royal style and naturalness to the occasion. As was the case everywhere, the princess was swamped with gifts for Prince William, who had just had his first birthday. The princess herself was only a few days short of her 22nd birthday. The tour of 1983 was a high point in the relationship between the Crown and its Canadian subjects. In addition to Prince Edward Island, the royal couple visited all the Atlantic provinces, Ottawa, and Alberta. The resounding success of this royal tour was perhaps not equaled until that of Prince William and Catherine, the Duchess of Cambridge, in 2011. The local press estimated that about 8,000 people had gathered in and around Queen Square to see the Prince and Princess. The royal yacht Britannia was named and launched by the Queen in 1953. During its 44 years of service, it carried Her Majesty and the royal family on 968 official voyages. The Queen's youngest child, Prince Edward, made his first solo visit to Canada in June 1987. On June 26th, Prince Edward visited the Halifax Citadel. This 19th-century fort was completed in 1856 and is the fourth in a series of British forts on this site. It is a National Historic Site commemorating Halifax's role as a key naval station of the British Empire. As part of the Citadel's history, visitors are introduced to the 21st century counterpart of the 78th Highlanders, one of the most famous Scottish military units who occupied the fort from 1869 to 1871. His Royal Highness witnessed a reenactment of a firing, reloading, and firing precision drill. Prince Edward then unveiled a plaque and was presented with a gift of a painting by renowned Canadian artist Tom Forrestal. The prince was then escorted to one of the Citadel's buildings, where he was introduced to actors in period dress who were portraying his ancestor, Prince Edward the Duke of Kent, and his companion, Julie Saint Laurent. Prince Edward and Julie arrived in Halifax in 1794, where they stayed for 6 years. Prince Edward's legacy included tearing down the existing ramshackle defense works atop Citadel Hill and replacing them with a vast array of wooden walls and trenches. However, Prince Edward would probably have known him better as the father of Queen Victoria. After the formal part of the proceedings, Prince Edward took time to mingle and speak with members of the large crowd who were present for the occasion. His Royal Highness seemed quite at ease. On this trip, the prince spent most of his time in Nova Scotia, where he carried out his duties as an international trustee of the Duke of Edinburgh's award scheme. Prince Edward departed in the company of his official hosts, Nova Scotia Premier John Buchanan and Halifax Member of Parliament Stuart McGuinness. In a final shot, taken from the Citadel, one can notice the considerable growth of buildings obstructing the view of Halifax Harbour, which had been so visible at the time of the 1939 visit of Prince Edward's grandparents. On August 13, 1994, Nova Scotia Premier John Savage and Mrs. Savage joined Lieutenant Governor James Kinley and Mrs. Kinley to await the arrival of Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth and His Royal Highness the Duke of Edinburgh at Halifax's Grand Parade. The Queen and Prince Philip arrived accompanied by Prime Minister Jean Chrétien. It had been 16 years since the royal couple's last visit to the province. Their Nova Scotia itinerary would include a visit to Sydney and the fortress of Louisbourg, before proceeding to British Columbia to attend the Commonwealth Games. Following the official welcome, Her Majesty departed to attend a ceremony at Province House. Prince Philip undertook a casual stroll from the Grand Parade to Province House. The crowd was obviously delighted with the informal walkabout, and this young police officer must have been pleasantly surprised with the special attention she received. Thousands had gathered in and around the grounds of Province House to see the royal couple, including a large representation by members of the Micmac community. Her Majesty arrived at Province House by limousine. In the presence of Her Majesty and His Royal Highness, an official ceremony was held designating Province House as a National Historic Site. The Queen then met privately with members of the House of Assembly. On the evening of August the 14th, Queen Elizabeth and Prince Philip attended an official dinner at the Halifax Sheraton Hotel, hosted by Prime Minister Chrétien. Members of the media pool were excluded from the dinner, but were permitted to take photos during the Prime Minister's opening remarks and his proposal of the loyal toast to Her Majesty. In her response, the Queen stated that Nova Scotia had always represented a cornerstone of the Canadian Federation, which represented to the world the ideals of freedom and democracy. Following the dinner, guests were requested to retire to the foyer of the ballroom and the hotel lobby. These venues provided an excellent vantage point to view the walk-through and departure of the Queen, Prince Philip, and the official party. One young lady was even fortunate enough to produce a spontaneous smile when Her Majesty stopped for a brief chat. It was a lovely touch on which to end a glittering evening.
I can't.
Hello. These t-shirts must have sold out. Very cool hats, fascinators. Royal BFF.
Yeah! Woo!
She'll come on a bit.
Hello, nice to meet you. Hi, guys.
Hi. Come to New Brunswick. Thank you. Thank you. You're so pretty.
It's really nice to meet you.
I did.
Nice to meet you.
You guys are awesome! Woo!
Oh my god, I love my
She's fashionably late.
Of course, she's the queen. I saw that key.
If you missed that bit of dialogue, one of those awaiting the arrival of the Queen at the Halifax Commons said, "She's fashionably late." His companion replied, "Of course, she's the Queen." Her Majesty and Prince Philip were visiting a Mi'kmaq cultural village where a 400th Member 2 anniversary was being celebrated. Here they met Mi'kmaq elders, poets, historians, and craftspersons. Hundreds of Nova Scotians braved heavy rain and wind to attend the welcoming festivities at the Halifax Garrison Grounds. Queen Elizabeth was accompanied by Canada's Governor-General, Michael Jean, and Prince Philip walked with Jean-Daniel Lefont, the Governor-General's husband. It was here that Her Majesty gave her only official remarks for the Nova Scotia portion of the visit.
Votre Excellence, Monsieur le Premier Ministre du Canada, Monsieur le Premier Ministre de la Nouvelle-Écosse. Prince Philip and I are very glad to have returned to Nova Scotia today to begin this tour of Canada, my 22nd visit as Queen of Canada. My mother once said that this country felt like a home away from home for the Queen of Canada. Prime Minister, I'm delighted to report that it still does, and I'm delighted to be back amongst you all. It has been 16 years since I was last here in Nova Scotia. There can be few places where the motto of 100,000 welcomes is put into practice with such conviction. Prince Philip and I are so very grateful to you all for the warmth of your greeting. Thank you again for your welcome. It's very good to be home.
On the morning of Thursday, July 7, 2005, bombings of a London bus and in the London Underground killed 52 people and injured hundreds. These photos were taken minutes after the attack on the bus near Tavistock Square. Terrorism had struck at the heart of London, causing panic, confusion, and a state of uncertainty. Now, for the first time, large-scale terrorism on British soil had become a reality, and the royal family would not be immune to the conditions of the country. Life in central London was brought to a standstill. A day of commemoration to mark the end of the Second World War had been planned for Sunday, July the 10th. Questions were raised as to whether the event could go ahead without the participation of the Queen and royal family. As the royal tours have shown, however, the Queen has always attempted to be as visible as possible. In a dramatic example of courage and inspiration, she went on BBC on July the 8th. The Queen noted that the people of the war generation had set an example, and that these memories should be kept alive by younger generations. Obvious parallels were drawn with the example shown to the British people by her parents during World War II. The Sunday celebrations went ahead. These photos show the Queen and Prince Philip riding from Buckingham Palace to Horse Guards Parade in an open carriage, and returning standing erect in a Land Rover. Thousands gathered in the Mall, cheering and clapping as Queen Elizabeth, Prince Philip, and the royal family appeared on the balcony of Buckingham Palace to watch a fly past, and a Lancaster bomber, flanked by a Spitfire and Hurricane, dropped 1 million poppies onto the throng below.